let's start with this because it is Veterans Day. And man, nothing says let's honor veterans than making sure endless war just continues indefinitely. And that's what they're doing. Look at this.
Yeah.
Senate panel proposes a $696 billion Pentagon spending bill. That's up from last year, folks. They got a promotion. It's up from last year. Wow. And by the way, they're getting a bunch of, they list here some of the stuff, fighter jets, which they're getting 96, which is 17 more than the administration requested, 5 more than the House bill would buy. They're building 9 new battle force ships. I mean, it's unbelievable. And especially like on a day like today, where it's like, oh, let's just assure that indefinitely we're going to have a system where we're going to crush people economically so they feel they have no choice but to join the military. We're going to sell them a bill of goods that they're actually doing good around the world. Then we're going to send them off to fight and kill at the behest of oil companies. And when they come back with crippling amounts of PTSD, maybe they get the support they need. Maybe they don't. And if they don't, tough cookies. We don't really care. And gee, I wonder why 22 veterans commit suicide every day. And this is how our government thanks them. This is how they appreciate them. I mean, we are an empire, and it's like we're not the good guys. We're not the good guys.
No, and I'm really thankful. I know I posted about this today, but I have kind of a friendship going with left flank vets who I think are a really cool group of people. And we've had some really wonderful talks about how like one particular person there remembers just, having a rough childhood, having no economic opportunity. And these recruiters they go to these areas in rural America where kids are in poverty and they have no hope of going to school because they'd end up with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt and can't imagine paying that off. And they offer them the military, and then they come home, like you said, with all sorts of medical issues and PTSD. And many of them end up homeless because it's a really rough transition to come home and try to find like an office job when you're fighting these issues that you've been left, like you have these scars.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I mean, I'm not familiar with that show you mentioned, but I do know it's so important when you have veterans who are really shining a light on this stuff and blowing the whistle on this stuff and speaking out about it. I'm not familiar with the show you mentioned, but I know people like a Mike Preisner and the Eyes Left podcast, like they're socialist veterans who are speaking out about what happened in Iraq and what happened to them and the just corruption, and that's putting it gently with what our military industrial complex is, but just the corruption that is sending people off to war to die for oil companies and for weapons manufacturers. And it's just Smedley Butler said it decades and decades ago, war is a racket, and we haven't learned our lesson. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. And I know that this proposal went through yesterday, but it's so amazing where it's like you just slap veterans in the face on Veterans Day. You slap the world in the face because we're setting the Middle East on fire. We're imperialists. We're an empire. And it screws over people at home, too. It screws over people at home. And and especially our veterans. It's like, when I talk about this stuff, through very extensive brainwashing, they try to sell this narrative. And when I say they, I mean the military industrial complex, I mean the powers that be, that when you say this kind of stuff, you're against the veterans or against the troops, excuse me. And no, it's the total opposite. You're against what the system is doing to these people. You're against what's going on. That's what I'm against. I had a cousin who served in Afghanistan. He shouldn't have been over there. He should have never been over there. And he has extensive PTSD that he's going to suffer from for the rest of his life. And I see it daily where he's not able to get the help that he needs. And you see that time and time again where, and these people are victimized. My cousin was the same situation. He he had a learning disability. He had, he didn't come from a ton of means, and they targeted him. They targeted him early on. And you see stuff like this happen time and time again. And it's a racket. And, now you see this. And by the way, simultaneously, what's happening? There's still no direct relief for people. And even in Joe Biden's plan, I saw Joe Biden's COVID plan a couple of days ago. I don't know if it's changed since a couple of days ago, but as of a couple of days ago, even he's not calling for direct relief for people. They've just abandoned the idea of doing it. They're just not going to do it. They're going to be like, you got that one-time $1,200 FU payment. That's all you're getting. And Republicans and Democrats are complicit in it.
It is. It's astounding because you can't come together and try to help your constituents who are literally starving. Like, there are mutual aids that are trying to get people a meal a day in Queens. And it's just thinking about the fact that they wouldn't have that if they didn't have like these people that are putting themselves on the line and collecting donations. We shouldn't be living from a GoFundMe right now, but that's too much for two parties to come together on and think that their constituents shouldn't starve to death. But why don't we get more tugboats for our military? Yeah. That's something we can all agree on.
And yeah, right. Well, you bring up mutual aid. So I had a mutual aid activist on the show from Seattle, a guy named Red, and it was such an eye-opening interview. And one of the things he said that will really stick with me for a long time is he talked about how the eventual end for someone like him is that they're just going to destroy everything he's built. They're going to try to destroy everything he's built. And it's so incredible to wrap your head around the fact that people who just dedicate their lives to trying to help others and to try and provide meals for the homeless and to trying to, first of all, in a more civilized society, somebody like Red would be an employee of the city. He'd be working for the city in a more civilized world. They'd be working together, not against him. It's unreal. And when you take a step and you look at it, this is not me being some over idealist. This is calling an empire for what it is. What do you call a society that always has money for endless war, that victimizes its own people in the process, not to mention people all over the world, and, screws people at home, and not only screws people at home, but villainizes people who are trying to help other people? That's not a civilized society. That's not a democracy. That's an empire. And that's what America is. America is an empire. And anyone who says we're a force for good around the world, they're freaking lying to you. They've been brainwashed too. That's straight up propaganda. Yeah. That's not to say there aren't things on the micro level that are happening. That's not to say there aren't people who are committed to service, who are doing good things in other countries. That's not what we're referring to when we say this stuff. That stuff is real. But when people say the powers that be is a force for good around the world, that's a straight up propaganda lie. That's a lie.
And if you're so hungry right now, that the mutual aid that somebody is doing from the kindness of their heart isn't enough for you and your family, and you go to a store and steal a loaf of bread, you go to jail. But whenever you think about the fact that, like, our current president, for example, like, has a lengthy list of federal crimes that he's committed while in office, and I would bet all my money on the fact that he'll never go to jail.
Oh, of course he won't. When I hear people say that, it's almost like, come on. Like you just sound like a naive, like you sound ridiculous. We're like, yeah, he's going to go to jail. It's like, you're the same. You're just the other end of the people who were saying lock her up and Hillary Clinton's going to go to jail. I'm sorry, that's just the reality. It's rich people play by a different set of rules. They just do. And whenever somebody of means faces any type of consequences, they're taking the heat for somebody even more powerful than them. So no, people like the Clintons don't go to jail. People like George W. Bush, they don't go to jail. People like Donald Trump, they don't go to jail. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's committing financial crimes daily. And I mean, so does our entire federal government, really. That's why they didn't look at any of his actual financial crimes, because so many of them they're complicit in. So many Nancy Pelosi's complicit in a lot of the same stuff. That's how she became $100 millionaire well in office.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we
We could go on. Sometimes I just think about like all the people who had Jeffrey Epstein at their weddings. And it's like
yeah,
that's the group of people who will never go to jail. Like the only reason Jeffrey Epstein went to prison is because he was finally exposed by some pretty gutsy journalism.
he is. I mean, it's so, and we don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole, but like it is so overwhelming. And I know, Graham Elwood, who's a colleague of mine who I tour with, he is very invested in that story, and he has kept the spark lit on that story as well as some others, and I'm glad they're doing it. It is so overwhelming when you just take a step back and you realize Jeffrey Epstein, a guy who was wealthy to the point where he would never wear the same shirt twice. Um, you know, Aside from being an incredibly sick, evil human being, which Jeffrey, I mean, evil beyond comprehension. Ghislaine Maxwell, evil beyond comprehension. But even aside from that, you have to keep in mind, they're middle tier people in the big scheme of things. They're in the middle.
Yeah.
That's why they face it. They're in the middle. The guy who never wears the same shirt twice, he's in the middle in the scheme of power. So it's overwhelming to even think about. It's just overwhelming to even think about. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Whenever we're like passing packages that is like Jeff Bezos' annual salary, it's like,
well, what do you call a society that's on its way to getting its first trillionaire while there's simultaneously food lines out of the Great Depression? You call that a failed state.
It is.
There's no getting around it. Like, we are a failed state. We are the bad guys. We are the empire. We are a failed state, to the point where we're just giving an open FU to anybody who, dedicated their lives to service, told they were serving this country. We're just giving them an FU because we're saying, hey, we're making sure that endless war continues on Veterans Day, no less. On Veterans Day, we're going to make sure endless war continues. And we got the money for it. We don't have the money to help anybody here. We don't have that money. There's no money. We can't possibly give you any kind of relief. But we got the money to make these fighter jets, baby. USA.
Yeah. And you think about like the United States Postal Service is one of the largest employers of veterans. And the fact that we've been screwing the USPS in so many different ways and are watching that crumble while we're like, hey, oh my gosh, we love you, veterans. Thank you so much for your service. Sorry about you're losing your job.
It's so amazing the propaganda around that still exists too. Because I mean, first of all, all the claims they make, like, oh, it's bankrupt, it's this, it's that. First of all, that's not even true. It's because they borrow from the Postal Service a lot of the time. So that's not even true. It's just a straight up lie. Second of all, even if there was some truth in that, guess what? It's not called the postal business. It's called the frickin' Postal Service. The word service is it. So it's a governmental service that's supposed to employ people, which it does. Who has those jobs? American citizens who get a salary. And then guess what they do with that salary? They spend it in the frickin' economy. Second of all, it's supposed to provide a service of low cost shipping all over the country and the world. It does that. It frickin' does that. It does that. So it's unreal. And again, it just goes to show the fact that that's even in the realm of conversation. The fact that whenever a Republican or Democrats, because Dems do it too, whenever they start, pontificating and flapping their gums about the Postal Service is bankrupt, this and that, the fact that they're just not laughed out of the room is criminal.
Like, I think the White House should be bankrupt. Bye. Like, I don't understand. Like, why are you trying? Like, people rely on the Postal Service for medication and like everything during the pandemic. I get our groceries in a box every week. Like, I don't understand.
I was really an optimist over the past for the past week. I was hoping we were just going to abolish the presidency altogether. That was what I was hoping, and then we'd go for the Senate. We just abolish it, and we just have a people's legislature. That's what
Well, Joe
that's what I'm holding out for.
Joe Manchin himself said there's no point of the Senate if there's no filibuster, and I'm like, then bye,
Yeah, goodbye.
bye.
Goodbye. We'll see you later. We'll see you later. Y'all are causing a lot of problems. We'll see you frickin' later. Oh, and by
If
the
we're
way,
gonna,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say if we're gonna pretend that federal money is scarce, then we'll take your salary back, Joe Manchin. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Yeah, you can go just go somewhere else. You can go get a fracking job that you love so much, Joe. Go get a temporary fracking job where you put your health at risk for a temporary job that exploits the environment. Go do that. Go do that, Joe. But you're not going to be able to do that because Green New Deal, baby. We're not giving up the fight.
Yeah.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news